There's a revolution happening in this region of Africa between August 2020 and July 2023. The Quartet of Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso and Niger all saw their respective governments overthrown by men in uniform, hoping to bring some positive change to their countries. These coups led to Western powers getting kicked out of the African continent in an embarrassing fashion. What followed next was the creation of an alliance that has since been the source of trouble to Western leaders, especially when it comes to this tiny landlocked country known as Burkina Faso. And the man behind all these sleepless nights for the West is this guy, Captain Ibrahim Traore. He is loved by young people all over the continent of Africa. Since coming into power, he has made strides to pull his people out of poverty and cut dependence on foreign aid. But his journey has not been without challenges. Yeah, the US seems to be pretty mad at him. And there have been reports of 18 assassination attempts on his life since becoming the leader of this small West African country. The question though is, how did a little-known soldier become one of the most feared African leaders of the 21st century, so much so that powerful forces are scrambling to take him out? This is the story of Ibrahim Traore, the man the West fears the most. These are scenes from recent protests across the continent of Africa and even in Europe. People coming out in their thousands to protest against assassination attempts on the life of Ibrahim Traore. But to understand this revolution, taking Africa by storm and why it means so much at home and abroad, we need to go back in history to a time when this country was known as the Republic of Upper Volta. The year is 1960, a wave of freedom movement is spreading across Africa. The Republic of Upper Volta is among the African countries declaring independence as it gains its freedom from France. The French had violently oppressed the region in the late 19th century. However, by the time World War II came to an end, the French were placed under increasing pressure to give up their colonial possessions. When the freedom movement got to Open Volta, the people could not contain their joy. Freedom at last. So it's the late 1960s. Maurice Yameogo becomes the first president of Upper Volta, and he immediately sets out to create real change for his people. But part of the way he does this is by making sure no one is able to oppose his rule. To consolidate his powers, Yameogo establishes a one-party state under the Voltaic Democratic Union. His administration continues to rely on France, with numerous French advisors holding key decision roles in the military and the civil administration. This neo-colonial relationship is criticized by his people, but Yameogo turns a deaf ear to their complaints. Instead, his rule becomes increasingly autocratic. He begins to jail critics and consolidate power by appointing his relatives to key positions within the government. In the years that follows, he embarks on lavish spending despite widespread poverty. However, his austerity measures and authoritarian style soon spark public discontent. By late 1965, nationwide strikes and demonstrations by unions erupt over wage cuts and the end of subsidies for traditional chiefs. The government becomes unstable. Yameogo declares a state of emergency, but mass protests persist all over the country, reflecting the people's frustration with economic hardships. Under his one-party rule. Amidst this chaos, the military steps in. On January 3, 1966, the army led by Lieutenant Col. Sangolle Lamazana seizes power, forcing President Yameogo to resign. The former president is then placed under house arrest as Lamazana assumes the presidency on January 7, 1966. The new regime wastes no time suspending the constitution and dissolving the National Assembly. This military intervention, the first of many in Burkina Faso's post-colonial history, is initially welcomed by citizens tired of Yameogo's rule. And so with the people solidly behind him, Lamazana slowly begins to establish his idea and rebuild the country in his own image. As one of his first major acts as president, he decides to establish the country's first military academy in Ouagadougou. This new institution, designed to mold the next generation of military leaders, offers a unique opportunity to 3 students from the most recent group of secondary school graduates who would be selected to join the academy with full scholarships. Among those who make the cut is Thomas Sankara. He will be relevant to our story much later. The late 1960s and 70s continues to witness tensions in the country's political climate. The people soon realize that Lamazana is no different from Yameogo. The president starts to consolidate power, ruling with a military-heavy regime. Political parties' activities banned in 1966 as he tries to stabilize the country. However,